Life throws you curveballs. Sometimes, those curveballs come in the form of a lease ending or a financial situation changing overnight. You find yourself in a tough spot. You need a roof over your head, but you can't afford it alone. This is not a choice you want to make, it's a choice you have to make. You're backed into a corner. You have to find a roommate, and you have to find one fast. This isn't about finding a new best friend. This is about survival. It's about paying the bills and keeping a place to live. You don't have the luxury of time. You can't wait for the perfect person to come along, so you start the search. You put out feelers. You post ads online. You tell your friends and family you're looking. The responses start to trickle in. Each one is a stranger. Each one is a question mark. You're trying to judge a person's entire character based on a few emails or a short phone call. It's an impossible task. You're looking for someone who's clean, responsible, and pays their rent on time. But deep down, you're also looking for someone who isn't going to turn your life upside down. You're looking for someone you can trust, even a little bit. That's a tall order when you're dealing with complete strangers. The pressure is immense. The clock is ticking. Your move-out date is getting closer and closer. You have to make a decision. You can't afford to be too picky. You might have to take a chance on someone you barely know. This is where the problems can start. You're making a huge decision based on very little information. You're inviting someone to share your personal space, your sanctuary. It's a gamble, and the stakes are high. You're betting on your own safety and peace of mind. You hope you're making the right choice, but you have no way of knowing for sure. This is a situation many people find themselves in. It's not a sign of failure. It's a reality of life. You do what you have to do to get by, but you need to go into it with your eyes wide open. You need to understand the risks involved. You are bringing an unknown element into your home. You need to be prepared for anything. This isn't just about sharing a kitchen or a bathroom. It's about sharing your life with someone you don't know, and that can be a very scary thing. You have to be smart. You have to be careful. Your well-being depends on it. My first experience with a mystery roommate was in college. I was a sophomore. My original roommate had decided to study abroad at the last minute. The dorms were full. The university housing office gave me a list of other students in the same boat. My options were limited. I could try to find an expensive off-campus apartment I couldn't afford, or I could roll the dice on a new roommate. I chose the latter. I needed a place to live, and this seemed like the only logical path. I started making calls. Most people had already found someone. It was getting down to the wire. Then I got a call back from a guy named Alex. He sounded normal enough on the phone. He said he was a quiet person. He said he was focused on his studies. He seemed like a safe bet. We met for about 10 minutes at the campus coffee shop. He didn't say much. He just nodded and agreed to everything I said. I was so relieved to have found someone that I ignored the fact that he was a little off. I told myself he was just shy. I was desperate. I needed to secure my housing for the semester. So, I agreed to room with him. We moved into our small dorm room together. For the first week, everything was fine. It was almost too fine. Alex was never there. He would leave before I woke up and come back long after I was asleep. His side of the room was perfectly neat, almost like a hotel room that hadn't been touched. His bed was always made. His books were stacked in a perfect pile. It was strange, but I figured he was just a very busy and tidy person. I was busy with my own classes and friends, so I didn't think too much of it. I was just glad he wasn't messy or loud. But the silence was its own kind of loud. It was an unsettling quiet. I was living with a ghost. I knew his name, but I didn't know anything else about him. I didn't know his major. I didn't know his friends. I didn't even know what he looked like most of the time because I so rarely saw him. I would sometimes hear him come in late at night, a brief shuffle of feet and the soft click of the door. Then, silence again. It started to feel less like I had a roommate and more like I was living in a space that was occasionally visited by a stranger. The initial relief I felt was starting to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The strangeness started to ramp up about 2 weeks into the semester. It began with small things, little inconsistencies that made me question what was going on. I would come back to the room and find things slightly moved. A book on my desk would be an inch to the left. A pen that I knew I had left on a notebook would be on the floor. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful. I told myself I was stressed with classes and wasn't paying attention, but it kept happening. It was subtle, but it was consistent. It was enough to make me feel like I wasn't alone, even when I was. Then came the odd hours. Alex's schedule, which was already bizarre, became even more erratic. He would disappear for days at a time. His bed would remain untouched. His belongings would sit there, collecting a thin layer of dust. I would start to wonder if he had moved out without telling me. Then, just as I was getting used to having the room to myself, he would reappear. He would show up at 3 or 4 in the morning. I would wake up to the sound of the door opening and see a silhouette standing in the doorway for a long moment before quietly entering. He never turned on the light. I tried to talk to him about it. I was direct. I said, "Hey Alex, I've noticed you keep some pretty late hours. Is everything okay?" He would just shrug. He would give me a one-word answer. "Fine," he'd say without making eye contact. He would then immediately put on his headphones or leave the room. He was a master of avoidance. He built a wall around himself that was impossible to penetrate. My questions were met with silence. My attempts at conversation were shut down. I was living with a brick wall that moved things when I wasn't there. The feeling of unease grew into a low-grade fear. Your home, your dorm room, is supposed to be your safe space. It's the one place where you can let your guard down. But I couldn't. I felt like I was constantly being watched. I felt like my privacy was being invaded, but I couldn't prove it. It was a psychological game, and it was starting to wear me down. I found myself studying in the library until it closed, just to avoid being in the room. I was becoming a guest in my own living space. The red flags were no longer just flags. They were giant, waving banners, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. The turning point came one Tuesday night. I had a late class and got back to the dorm around 10 p.m. As I walked down the hall, I saw that our door was slightly ajar. I always locked the door when I left. It was a habit ingrained in me since childhood. I knew for a fact that I'd locked it that morning. My heart started to pound. I pushed the door open slowly, calling out Alex's name. There was no answer. I flicked on the lights. The room was empty. Nothing seemed to be missing. My laptop was still on my desk. My wallet was still in my drawer. But the door had been unlocked. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Alex had come back and forgotten to lock it when he left again. But that didn't feel right. It went against the grain of his usual mysterious but seemingly cautious behavior. I called my dad. I told him what was happening. I told him about the moved items, the strange hours, and now the unlocked door. He was worried. He told me to trust my gut. He said, "If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. You need to protect yourself." He urged me to talk to the resident advisor, the RA, on my floor. He was right. I couldn't handle this alone anymore. The next day, I went to the RA. I explained the whole situation. He listened patiently. He seemed to understand my concern. He told me he would talk to Alex. He also gave me some advice. He told me to start documenting everything. Write down every time something strange happened. Note the date and the time. He also suggested I get a lockbox for my valuables, just in case. It was practical advice, but it also validated my fears. The fact that he was suggesting these measures meant that my concerns were legitimate. I wasn't just being paranoid. Something was genuinely wrong. The RA talked to Alex. I don't know what was said, but after that conversation, things got even weirder. Alex stopped coming back to the room altogether. For 2 solid weeks, he was gone. His stuff was still there, but he had vanished. I called his phone, and it went straight to voicemail. I was now living with the ghost possessions. The uncertainty was awful. Was he coming back? Had something happened to him? I reported his absence to the RA and the housing office. They tried to contact him and his emergency contacts, but got no response. I was living in a mystery I couldn't solve, and I was getting more scared by the day. After college, I moved to a new city for a job. I was starting fresh. For the first year, I lived alone in a tiny, expensive studio apartment. It was peaceful, but it was a major financial strain. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I knew I couldn't sustain it. I had to make a change. The memory of my college roommate, Alex, was still fresh in my mind. I was hesitant to live with someone again, but the financial reality was staring me in the face. I had to cut my living expenses. That meant finding a roommate. This time, I thought, I'll be smarter about it. I decided to use a roommate finding website. It seemed more controlled than a random post on a public forum. You could create a profile. You could list your habits and preferences. You could see profiles of potential roommates. It felt like a more modern, more thorough way to find someone compatible. I spent hours crafting my profile. I was honest about my lifestyle. I'm clean, I'm quiet during the week. I work a standard 9-to-5 job. I wanted to attract someone similar. I wanted to avoid another mystery. I wanted normal. That's all I wanted. I started browsing profiles. It was like online dating, but for your living situation. I messaged a few people who seemed promising. I had a checklist. Do they have a steady job? Do they have references? Can they pass a background check? I was determined not to make the same mistakes I made in college. I wasn't going to be swayed by desperation. I was going to be methodical. I was going to be careful. I was going to vet each candidate thoroughly. I was in control this time. Or so I thought. I was treating it like a business transaction. I eventually connected with a woman named Sarah. Her profile was perfect. She was a graphic designer who worked from home. She described herself as an introvert who liked to keep to herself. She was clean and respected personal space. We exchanged several long, detailed emails. We had a video call. She seemed friendly, articulate, and completely normal. She passed the background check with flying colors. She had great references from her previous landlord. On paper, she was the perfect roommate. I felt confident. I felt like I had done my due diligence. I offered her the room, and she accepted. I thought, finally, this is going to work out. For the first month, living with Sarah was great. It was exactly what I had hoped for. She was quiet and clean. She paid her rent on time. We would have pleasant, brief conversations in the kitchen when we crossed paths. We respected each other's space. It was a peaceful and functional living arrangement. I felt a huge sense of relief. I thought I had finally cracked the code to finding a good roommate. I had been careful, and it had paid off. The stress of my financial situation eased. I could finally relax in my own home again. Then, the quirks started to appear. Sarah worked from home, so she was always there. But I started to notice that she never, ever left the apartment. Not for groceries, not for a walk, not for anything. Groceries and packages would be delivered to our door almost daily. At first, I just thought she was a homebody. But weeks went by, and her routine never changed. She would stay in her room all day with the door closed. I would hear her typing or on calls, so I knew she was working. But the complete lack of engagement with the outside world started to seem less like a preference and more like a compulsion. The next strange behavior was the talking. Not to me, and not on the phone. She would talk to herself, loudly. I would be in my room, and I could hear her having full, animated conversations in her room. It wasn't just a mumble. It was like she was arguing with someone. The tone would shift from calm to angry to sad, all within a few minutes. I tried to ignore it. I would put on my headphones, but it was hard to ignore. It was unsettling. It made the apartment feel tense. The peaceful atmosphere we had at the beginning was slowly eroding. The final straw in this phase was the windows. Our apartment had several large windows in the living room. One evening I came home from work to find every single window covered from the inside with black trash bags. They were taped meticulously to the window frames, blocking out all natural light. The living room was plunged into darkness. When I asked her about it, she was very matter-of-fact. She said the light bothered her. She said she needed complete darkness to concentrate. She didn't see anything strange about it at all. I was standing in a blacked-out living room with a woman who talked to herself and never went outside. My gut was screaming at me. This isn't quirky. This is concerning. The situation with Sarah escalated quickly after the window incident. The apartment felt like a cave. It was always dark and quiet, except for the sound of her one-sided conversations coming from behind her closed door. I started to feel trapped. I dreaded coming home from work. The place that was supposed to be my refuge had become a source of anxiety. I started spending more time out of the apartment, just like I had in college. I would go to the gym, visit friends, or just sit in a coffee shop until late. Anything to delay going back to that dark, tense space. The breaking point was a specific terrifying incident. I came home late one night, around 11 p.m. As I unlocked the door, I heard a loud crash from inside the apartment, followed by a scream. My blood ran cold. I pushed the door open, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sarah was standing in the middle of the darkened living room. She had knocked over a lamp. She was staring at the front door, her eyes wide with what looked like genuine terror. She looked at me as if she had seen a ghost. She was breathing heavily. I asked her what was wrong, if she was okay. She didn't answer me directly. Instead, she started talking about them. She said they were watching her. She pointed at the blacked-out windows and said they were trying to look in. She was rambling, her words not making much sense. She seemed convinced that someone was after her. Her paranoia was no longer contained to her room, it had spilled out into our shared space. I was no longer just an observer of her strange behavior, I was now a character in her delusion, and I was terrified. In that moment, I knew I had to leave. This was no longer about discomfort or awkwardness. This was about my safety. I didn't know what she was capable of. I didn't know if her paranoia could turn violent. I calmly backed out of the apartment, telling her I had forgotten something in my car. I got in my car, locked the doors, and called my parents. I was shaking. I explained what had just happened. They told me not to go back in there alone. They said I needed to get out. My dad offered to drive to my city the next day to help me. I spent that night at a friend's house, feeling like a refugee from my own home. The next morning I felt a strange mix of fear and resolve. The fear was for my immediate safety. The resolve was a firm decision that I was done. I was done with mysterious roommates. I was done feeling unsafe in my own home. I was done ignoring my instincts. I called my landlord and explained the situation. I told him about Sarah's behavior, the blacked out windows, and her paranoid episode. I told him I was breaking the lease due to safety concerns. He was surprisingly understanding. He said there were clauses for situations like this. He agreed to let me out of my lease without a penalty, as long as I moved out quickly. My dad arrived that afternoon. Having him there gave me the courage I needed. We went to the apartment together. I had texted Sarah to let her know I was coming to get some things. When we entered, she was in her room with the door closed. The apartment was still dark and silent. We worked quickly and quietly. We packed up my essential belongings, clothes, documents, my laptop. We didn't try to move the big furniture yet. The goal was just to get me and my most important possessions out of there. Every small noise from her room made me jump. The atmosphere was thick with tension. We loaded my things into my dad's truck. As I was about to leave, I slid a letter under Sarah's door. I didn't have the courage to face her. In the letter, I explained that I was moving out. I told her I was concerned for her well-being and that I thought she should talk to a professional or her family. I wished her the best. It was a cowardly way to do it, maybe, but I had to prioritize my own safety. I couldn't be her therapist or her savior. I had to save myself. Driving away from that apartment building, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. In the end, I moved into another small, expensive studio apartment. It was a financial hit, but it was worth every penny. The peace of mind was priceless. I had taken control of my situation. I had listened to my gut. I had removed myself from a dangerous environment. It was a difficult and stressful experience, but it was a necessary one. I learned that you can't put a price on feeling safe. I had to rebuild my sense of security, but this time, I was doing it on my own terms, in a space that was truly my own. I was finally free from the anxiety that had been my constant companion. Looking back on these experiences, with both Alex and Sarah, the biggest lesson I learned is simple. Trust your gut. Your intuition is a powerful tool. It's your internal alarm system. When it goes off, you need to listen to it. With both roommates, I had a feeling early on that something was not right. With Alex, I dismissed it as shyness. With Sarah, I dismissed it as quirkiness. I made excuses for their behavior because it was easier than confronting the uncomfortable truth. The truth was that I had made a bad choice, and I was in a potentially unsafe situation. Ignoring that feeling only made things worse. Another lesson is the importance of having a plan. When you decide to live with a stranger, you need to have a safety plan and an exit strategy. This isn't being paranoid. It's being smart. This means having conversations about boundaries and expectations up front. It means having your own support system, friends and family, who you can talk to. It means knowing your rights as a tenant and what the terms of your lease are. If I hadn't been able to get out of my lease with Sarah, the situation could have been much more difficult. You have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. These experiences also changed my definition of what's important in a home. It's not about the size of the apartment or the fancy amenities. It's about security. It's about having a sanctuary where you can feel completely at ease. For me, that meant making the financial sacrifice to live alone for a while. That may not be an option for everyone, but the principle is the same. You must prioritize your mental and physical well-being above all else. No amount of money saved on rent is worth the cost of your peace of mind or your safety. That's a bad trade, every single time. Ultimately, you are your own best protector. You can't rely on a background check or a pleasant first impression to guarantee your safety. People are complex, and sometimes, they are unwell. You have to be vigilant, you have to set boundaries, and you have to be willing to make tough decisions to protect yourself. Even if it means breaking a lease, moving out suddenly, or having a difficult conversation. Living with roommates can be a great experience, but when it's bad, it can be truly awful. The chronicles of my mysterious roommates taught me to be cautious, to trust my instincts, and to never ever compromise on my own safety. And that's a lesson that is priceless.